Hi everyone, welcome back to the processes from the project management body of knowledge. This one we're looking at today is controlling our resources. So where does controlling our resources fit in our overall process group and knowledge area mapping from the PMBOK guide? Well, we're in the project resource management area and we're now in the monitoring and controlling area. So we've started working on our deliverables and we've planned out the project management plan, of course, and now it's time for us to, we've gathered all of the resources and we've sort of tried to improve our resources over time, and now it's just a matter of controlling those resources, making sure that they're there when we need them. So controlling resources is the process of ensuring that the physical resources assigned to and allocated to the project are available as planned, as well as monitoring the planned versus actual utilization. So monitoring what we had planned to use versus what we are actually using for our resources, and taking corrective action as necessary. If it's going off track, of course, with all of our other controlling processes, very similar to our cost controlling, schedule controlling, same with our resources controlling. If it's going off track, we need to bring it back on track. The key benefit of this process is ensuring that the assigned resources are available to the project at the right time and in the right place, and that they're released when they're no longer needed as well. Here's an overview of controlling resources. So it's concerned with monitoring resource expenditures. So how much is it costing us? Are we paying the right amount of money at the right time? Identifying and dealing with resource shortages. So do we have the right people and the right items that we need? Ensuring that resources are used and released according to the plan. So as we had planned it, who is needed when, what is needed when, and when we don't need them anymore, can we let them go and no longer need it and no longer pay for those resources? Informing appropriate stakeholders if any issues arise, and influencing any of the factors that can create resource utilization change. So we may have to influence or negotiate if there are conflicts in people's schedules or in the schedules of the items that we need. Inputs, tools and techniques, and outputs for controlling resources. Inputs, we've got the project management plan as always. The project documents, things like physical resource assignments, project schedule, resource breakdown structure, the work performance data, that raw data that is coming out of our project, agreements that have been put in place, and organizational process assets. Tools and techniques we'll see are data analysis. So we might have alternatives analysis between a few different alternatives, cost-benefit analysis, and trend analysis. And of course, problem solving, interpersonal and team skills, and our project management information system to gather all of that information so that we can use that information and turn into reports as needed. Outputs we'll see are our work performance information, of course. Change requests that might come out of any resource changes, project management plan updates for our schedule baseline or cost baseline, or even the resource management plan, and of course project documents updates like our lessons learned and physical resource assignments if they do change. Controlling resources has a big input into monitoring and controlling the project work, of course for our work performance information, and change requests if we're going into perform integrated change control and we're needing to make a change request, then of course it has an input into that as well. And project management plan and project documents for all of those items as well, risk register, physical resource assignments, issues log and assumptions log. Let's look at the inputs in more detail. We've got the project management plan. The resource management plan as part of the project management plan provides guidance on how physical resources should be used, controlled, and eventually released. This is our process, how we agreed we would manage our resources right up front when we started putting together our project management plan. And this is a good time to reflect on that so we can see how we should be managing our resources. Project documents as an input as well, of course, the project schedule. So we need to know when our project is happening, and that could be as part of our schedule network diagram, or a Gantt chart, or even just an activities list with dates. But we need to know what is required at these dates as our schedule goes along for our project. The resource breakdown structure. So so what part of our project and who is required for what part of our project as we decompose the higher level parts into smaller level parts, right down into each individual team member that's required. resource requirements, our risk register, of course, for any risks that come up, and physical resource assignments. This could be our resource assignment matrix that we looked at, something similar to a RACI, where we find out who is responsible, who's accountable for a certain item, who needs to be consulted, and who needs to be informed for a certain item as well as part of our project. Other inputs we'll see are our work performance reporting, but mostly the data, the raw data, will be an input into this. So that contains data on the project status, such as the number and type of resources that have been used. So who have we got, or what have we got, and who haven't we got, and do we need to adjust? That's where we need to control our resources. Any agreements that have been made within the context of the process, and that's a basis for all of our resources external to the organization, maybe as well. So those agreements that have been made will be very important, and that can be an input into us controlling those resources over time. Organizational process assets we might see as templates or policies. We've got policies regarding resource control within the organization that you're working in, maybe escalation procedures that you might see within the organization, and of course our lessons learned repository if we can find any lessons from previous projects or similar situations. Tools and techniques that we'll see for controlling our resources are data analysis. So we might have things like alternatives analysis, cost-benefit analysis, where we're looking at the cost. So maybe something's going to cost 1 million, and the benefit over time, perhaps over 2 to 3 years, might be 5 million, for example. And then of course our cost to benefit is 1 to 5. So that's just a brief example there. We'll also need performance reviews for our staff. So how are our staff tracking? Are they meeting the tasks that we've set, or are they not meeting the tasks that we've set? And do we need to make any changes? And of course, trend analysis. Are we trending off course, or are we still proceeding as planned as we're controlling the resources for our project? Tools and techniques we'll see are problem solving as well, where we may need to solve problems in regards to the resources. And there is a methodical steps that we can go through to deal with problem solving, which could include identifying the problem, so just calling out whatever the problem is, defining it very clearly, so really getting into the nitty-gritty of what the problem is, investigating all of the data, and maybe we'll need some expertise or expert judgment, and of course data analysis there. Then analyzing that data and making sure that we understand the problem correctly. Then we want to find solutions based on all of that analysis. And finally, once we implement that solution, we can check that it has happened and that it's done exactly what we want. This is also known as the Deming cycle, so plan, do, check, act, in a simplified form. But also it feeds into Agile, where it's an iterative method, and we're improving and then getting feedback, and improving and getting feedback again. Interpersonal and team skills such as conflict management. We may need things like negotiation or influencing, and these are sometimes known as soft skills. It's not like mathematics where 1 + 1 = 2, but this is something where it's a little bit harder to pin down sometimes. Negotiating and influencing and keeping that good stakeholder management, finding situations that can have good outcomes for most of the people involved where possible, can be a very tough thing to do, but it is something that we'll have to do when we're trying to control the resources and making sure that everyone is there when we need them for our project. We'll also need the project management information system, of course, and again, this is that overarching system. It's not just one IT system or one process. It's a combination of all of those things. What is the overarching system and tools and things that we're using to gather the information for our project and place it into certain databases or wherever it is, systems, and what's the process for gathering that information and dispersing it through to our team members or stakeholders as well. Outputs that we'll see for controlling resources. Work performance information. So this includes information on how the project work is progressing, by comparing the resource requirements that we had at the beginning and to the resource allocation that has actually happened. And so now that comparison can show any gaps in resource availability that might need to be addressed. So what had we planned as part of our project management plan and our resource plan? and now what is actually happening. Maybe this person can't come, or this tool or this machine can't come at the right time, and so that's going to affect things like our schedule or our cost, and of course that's where this work performance information plan, what we've planned versus what is actually happening. Change requests might happen as well as a result of the resources, if the resources are not available and they do affect our cost or our schedule, or even the scope if someone can't perform a particular task and the scope simply can't be completed. We may need to raise that change request that goes through the change control board, usually if there is one for your project, or at the very least is raised and approved by the project sponsor. We'll see project management plan updates where we might need to update the resource management plan, of course, if anything changes in the way that we're going to be managing our resources. Remember, that's just mostly for the process or the framework that we're going about. So the how we're gathering resources and controlling our resources. Then of course, the schedule baseline and cost baseline may need to change, as we've seen, if the resources affect our schedule or our cost. And lastly, of course, we've got project documents updates, where we might need to update any issues that occur. And of course, as you know, we've got risks first that we call out before things happen. But once something happens, it becomes an issue. And we need to log that in the issue log, and anyone can raise an issue throughout the project. And of course, as we work through that issue, it may become a change. And then that change might need a change request and go through that process, of course. So we've got our physical resource assignments might need to be updated, and our resource breakdown structure might need to be updated if the people within the project structure are changing over time as well. And those are all the details for controlling resources as part of the project management body of knowledge.